Good morning, brothers. JK, your brother in this struggle here, coming at you with another episode of Porn Reboot Coach in the Porsche. Today we're going to be answering the question, should I get on some sort of medication to reduce my sex drive if I have a high sex drive? And this is inspired by a brother in our Reboot implementation program. For those of you who are new, I am JK Amazy. I am the founder of Elevated Recovery and head coach in the Porn Reboot coaching system. We help business owners, entrepreneurs, and ambitious professionals end their secret out-of-control sexual behavior with pornography, sex, and masturbation discreetly. This question was brought up by a brother who is seeing a therapist, a counselor. In our group, we encourage brothers who are dealing with other issues to work with a counselor and therapist in tandem with Reboot coaching, if necessary. However, in this case, his counselor brought up something, and that thing was his counselor told him that based on working with him, he believed that he had a high sex drive, and he recommended that he get on medication to reduce his extraordinarily high sex drive. This brother is in his mid-20s. I find this concerning for several reasons, and I'm mainly putting out this video so that if you find yourself in a similar situation, you have some guidelines on what you could do. Because there are a lot of brothers who already believe this thing about high sex drive. It's another cultural thing that we hear. Oh, I have a high sex drive, my libido is high, that's what it must be. And we just hear this without anybody actually explaining it. First thing to understand is that there are many things that impact whatever you call your sex drive, right? It could be your hormonal profile, it could be hypersexuality, it could be a sexually compulsive disorders. There are multiple factors. And anybody who is going to recommend that you seek some sort of medical intervention in order to reduce your sex drive should ideally have addressed all these different factors that influence it. And so my concern immediately this brother brought it up to the group was, whoa. First of all, just get this out of the way. I don't know if this therapist recommended it or referred him out to somebody else. But first of all, gentlemen, most counselors, at least that I know of, unless they have some other sort of qualification or designation, cannot prescribe medication, right? I don't prescribe medication. I may talk about supplements, but if it ever has anything to do with a controlled substance, I will refer you out or recommend that you speak to the appropriate licensed medical professional to get a diagnosis and talk about the possibility of getting on that medication. But a counselor cannot and ideally should not be recommending that until they have addressed other means of dealing with this issue. That's the first thing. So the second thing is your hormonal profile. The question I would ask is, have you got your blood work done? Do you know what your testosterone levels are? And not just your testosterone levels. People hear that and just get one value. What is your free testosterone level and what's your total testosterone level? So your free testosterone level would be the amount of testosterone that is bioavailable at the time, which some people might argue that that's actually what's more important. For example, you could have a lower total testosterone level than what is touted to be the ideal, but then your free testosterone levels are actually healthy. Not only that, you want to look at your estrogen levels, your luteinizing LH levels as well. And there are a few other biomarkers to look at that have an impact on your sex drive. It's not just, I have high testosterone, therefore my sex drive is high. I have high testosterone, but that doesn't mean I'm walking around with a boner. I have higher testosterone than the average man. But again, I'm not walking around with a boner or crazy sex drive. So these are things to look into. Your age as well. How old are you, right? Are you a young man in your early 20s? Are you 18, 19 years old? These are things to look at because your sex drive is going to be a little bit different. Now, another factor is sexually compulsive behaviors. Have you conditioned yourself to constantly seek out sexual stimuli? Are you medicating everything that you experience, all your strong emotions, with sexual thoughts? Are you constantly objectifying? Now, a therapist or counselor who is not trained in dealing with sexually compulsive behaviors. You guys know how it is. I used to be a porn addict. Could hear you talk about, oh my God, I just feel like fucking everyone. I'm objectifying every woman I see, old and young. They could hear that. If they don't know how to treat you, they could easily get frustrated. You're like, hey man, I've made all these suggestions and you keep coming back. You're masturbating before bed every night. Every time you get emotional, you're jerking off. A frustrated counselor or therapist who does not have the expertise to treat you could easily fall back on their own biases that have nothing to do with their training and go like, oh, this person probably has a high sex drive. Right? Maybe he's just a highly sexed individual, and go back to some archaic way of labeling a client. So that's actually what is more likely than any other scenario. It's the fact that they are not trained in that, possibly, and they find it surprising that you can go day in, day out without any sort of sexual satiation thinking about sex and pornography. They might find it surprising that you could masturbate, not even have an emotional need to masturbate, yet still do it again habitually. So if they don't understand that, and by understanding that, I'm not saying that your counselor should have been a porn addict in the past. It's helpful if they have, and they have successfully overcome that, but not a necessity. But they do have to have training. And the final thing is, you could be hypersexual. Sometimes this is as a result of certain mental health conditions. For instance, one of the things I've noticed is that some clients who have bipolar disorder, I don't even know if it should be classified as a disorder. I think recent studies show that it's just a thing. You know, a lot of things that we say are mental health issues, frankly speaking, aren't really issues. They're just modes of biological existence that we are yet to fully understand. Let's just put that out there when I use the word disorders, because I don't want to be the guy years from now who people are just like, oh my God, such an archaic video and an archaic view of mental health. But yeah, some clients that I've seen who have bipolar disorder tend to be hypersexual. Some clients who experience sexual trauma in their childhood also have a tendency to be hypersexual. That doesn't mean that they have a high sex drive, which needs to be modulated by medication. So here's the thing, just in a nutshell. JK, what are you trying to say? What I'm trying to say is that before you seek medication for any issue that you have, it is advisable to make sure you get a second and a third opinion, if you can afford it and if you can get it, and that you make sure that you've tried every other avenue before you go down the medication path. This does not mean that I do not advocate for medication. There are clients that I've worked with who have eventually gone on medication because their ADHD was interfering with the reboot process, and they had tried other methodologies which did not work. So they started going through the porn reboot system. Works for them. They're like, it's the best thing, this is the most control I have. But then we find out that some other issue they have is interfering with it. So we try different avenues. And over time, sometimes time could be a year, sometimes it could even be 2 years while we're trying to figure this out, which is often a red flag for me, because if somebody is in our program for up to 2 years and they're still struggling, there's usually some other underlying issue, which we're usually able to take care of. But in some cases, these brothers get on medication. So that's all I'm saying. Seek a second or third opinion and look at other paths to dealing with that issue. And always be skeptical when your one counselor who does not have training in sexually compulsive disorders tells you to just take the easy pad and pop a pill so that you reduce your sex drive. It's very dangerous because it's a very attractive option to porn addicts. There are some cases, I don't know if these are cases or these are just like straight up myths, about individuals who chemically castrated themselves because of their sexual compulsive disorder. There was a time that I had so much lack of control that I considered wearing one of those little chastity devices on my dick. Like, I think I was watching porn in my addict days, and there was this thing that popped up as a pop-up, I believe, on all the trash that they try to sell you while you're watching porn. And it popped up, and I was like, what the fuck is this? Why would somebody wear that? And then the thought popped into my head. I was just like, I'm always getting these erections for no damn good reason, always getting turned off. And it was more about always touching my dick. I was like, I'm always touching myself, even when I'm trying to end this behavior. Back then I was using willpower. I'm still edging a lot, and I just want to stop, man. It wasn't even a mental thing anymore. For me, it was just about the appendage at that point. It was anger at my dick for what it was causing me to do. So I was pretty far gone, as you can surmise from that. And I thought of using a chastity device. If a therapist had recommended it at that point to me, I would have gone with that. Now I shudder to think, I was like, why the fuck would I need to wear something like that? This is for me, not for you. There might be dudes out there who are already doing that. I think it would have been a very demeaning thing. I think I would have created a lot of shame, and I think I would have actually led myself into some other unwanted issues. So I don't know the direct impact of medication on brothers, but I don't know whether it's going to repress or suppress your sexuality. I don't know, and I don't think there are enough studies that have been done on that. I do know that rebooting works. I do know that for the vast majority of men, well over 95% of men who are selected into our program, they gain control over their sexual behavior. And I feel that before anyone goes down that path, they need to give themselves the chance to at least get to the late stage of their reboot. And that is the stage where the only thing that is causing you to slip or to relapse is some unresolved issue. But the beauty of it is that by that point, we have covered so much ground. You have become an expert at yourself that you, without the assistance of a therapist or a counselor or a psychiatrist, can quite easily narrow it down to one or two issues. Then you can seek out the appropriate help, because now you are educated via direct experience over time of dealing with your emotions, of identifying certain cognitive dissonance, certain thought patterns. You're just in a much better place. You also have a whole arsenal, so to speak, of coping strategies that you can deploy to manage any potentially overwhelming states of emotion you might be in. I feel I should have ended this video 5 minutes ago, so I'm gonna end it right now. I'm JK, your brother in the struggle. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this episode of Porn Reboot Coach in the Porsche, which, by the way, I shoot when I'm running errands. So sometimes you might see me being a little bit distracted. Road safety first. I appreciate you guys, and if you want to interact a little bit more with me, consider joining our free Facebook group. It is private and discreet. There's a link to it in the description below the video. I'll talk to you later.